cool, huh? I just made that up right off the top of my head. Now, you might be wondering, what the heck is that? I was moving around a lot. I was playing what seemed like a lot of chords, but what was I really doing there? Okay, well, we're going to talk about that today, and I'm going to explain how what I was doing right there was going to apply a lot to the rhythm guitar styles that you're going to learn about in this lesson and other lessons. Okay, it all goes back to the CAGED system. Okay, the CAGED chords that we have right over here. Very familiar with these. These are the major CAGED systems. Refers to the CAGED lettering because they started off in the order of the open string chords that we learned. C, A, G, E, and D. Okay? All those chords became movable bar chords. Right? The C chord became this chord, movable bar chord. The A chord became this chord right here. Right? The G chord became this chord. The E chord became this form. And the D chord became this form. Okay. Now, when I was playing there just a minute ago, you could see that I was playing small chords. I wasn't playing the big forms. I was playing things like this. Okay, now what are those chords? Well, I'm here to tell you today they're just smaller versions of those big CAGED chords, the big bar chords that we often play. Okay, so we're going to learn how to take the bar chords that we learned here from the CAGED system and apply them and break them down into smaller chords to get more movable and more connectable kinds of chords for certain kinds of rhythms. Because not every time you play rhythm, you don't want to play big chords like that. That's great for a lot of volume and a lot of power, but sometimes you want smaller shapes. Okay, so let's see how we're going to adapt these chords. Really, it comes down to just taking some of the notes off the bottom of the chords and just fitting shapes inside of the chord. So this A chord that I was playing right here, it's very usable if you just get rid of the bottom notes and the top note and perhaps just play this much of the chord. Right? Now we've got just a small version of an A chord. And if this is my key here, we've got a great movable A chord. Doesn't necessarily have a lot of bottom end. It's not as full, but it's a really good chord for a lot of situations. I could even play, if I wanted to, all the way up to the E string here and play this note, and that would be okay too. But for right now, I'm just going to use this for my rhythm demonstration. Okay, well let's take a look at this chord over here. Let's see what we can do to this chord that might make sense for us. Let's get rid of the bottom of the chord right here, and get rid of this note right here, and just we remain with this chord, and here's the root. And now we've got a nice movable form that becomes maybe this shape. Or if it was A, let's say, like this chord, we have this form up here. Instead of this chord, we have this chord down. It's a smaller, less full-sounding chord, but more quickly adaptable. Right? Sometimes we want a lighter texture to our chords. We don't always want that sound. So that's what we're going to use here, okay? Let's find another way to adapt the chord. How about if we take this chord and just get rid of the low root? Remember, this form has two roots. It's right here. So that's perfectly legitimate as a chord. That would be a D chord, right? We just don't have the low root. We just have this, which we can play with a variety of one finger type of situations. A lot of times I might play that chord with my first finger now. So what I was doing when I first started to play was I was playing this chord and I was connecting to this chord, and then I was going back to this chord. So in this case I was going D to G, right? Back to D. And then I was moving over to this chord form, adapted from this shape, and then sliding that down a whole step to G. So I was basically playing ba, 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 by doing this. Right? Now you might be wondering, well, how come I haven't adapted this chord and this chord? Well, essentially, what we find is this shape of this chord is inside of this chord right here, because remember, when we took this form of a major chord, you can see how the upper form is just part of the same shape. So we really are playing this chord anyway. We're just playing this part of it when we play this shape. Okay? And this other form right here is essentially these two notes here without this root here in the bottom and this root on top. So it's sort of like we're getting these chords in these other shapes. So we don't really need to adapt them. We'll find another way to get into this position later. But for today's lesson, we're just using pretty much these three shapes out of the CAGED system. So we're talking about smaller triad shapes out of the bar chords, okay? So let's go over that pattern again. I was playing D, G, D, A, G. Okay, now listen to the difference. If I'd played these as full chords, I would have had to do this kind of a thing to get that same melody on the notes right there. I would have had to do this. Much harder to play, much more hand movement there. But listen to how easy it is to play this way. I think at the end I actually did that too, which is this chord here now played in the key of D. So I went G to D here. Okay, so I'm essentially playing just up and down these three strings to make this rhythm guitar phrase happen. Okay, so that's kind of a cool way to come up with new guitar rhythms, is to take your existing bar chords and chop some of the notes off the bottom and maybe on the top strings, or adapt them to smaller shapes so you can come up with more movement and more melody when you're playing the rhythm guitar parts. Okay? So let's see how that's going to apply to this progression behind us here. How can we adapt that? Okay, well, let's see here. I've got a chord progression that looks like it's a lot of chords in the key of A, which is perfect for us. Okay, and I've got a specific rhythm that we can attach to this chord progression. A couple of spots where there's some specific rhythm attacks. Remember what these symbols means. This is a quarter note rest, this is a quarter note attack, quarter rest, and 2 eighth notes. So that rhythm is going to sound like this. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and. Okay? Very simple but effective. So let's see if we can make these chords now, these smaller shapes, fit into our rhythm here. Okay, I bet we can. So if we went like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and, right? I could take this A shape and this D shape and just keep them right inside of this form. Of course, I could also take the A shape that we learned here and then make the D form down here. That way I'd have a little bit of a different melody on the top notes. Listen to that sound now. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and. Notice I'm also playing it as a shuffle rhythm again. So.